Hello, and welcome to UpFront. My name is Dean Thullner, and we are filming on the unceded Nanaimo traditional territory. Today, I'm sitting down with a dear friend of mine, Sarah Cameron, who is going to talk about lived experience and how she gives it back to our community. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Dean.
How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's an honor to be here, really.
Oh, great. Well, I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm so excited to have you here today.
Okay.
Who is Sarah Cameron? Why don't we start off with telling the audience who you are?
Okay. Well, like everyone, I have a number of different identities, that I carry with me in my life. I'm a parent of two boys, and I'm a musician. I've spent much of my life performing and teaching music.
I know this because you volunteered for the Shine fundraiser that I produced, and you're an
did.
incredible saxophonist.
Thank
Is that
you.
the right term, saxophonist?
Yeah.
Okay. And sorry to interrupt you. Yes?
That's fine. I would say also very active. I enjoy moving my body. So running, swimming, lately doing a lot of yoga, not only for fitness, but also as part of my spiritual practice. I'm also in recovery from active addiction. I'm 23 years in recovery.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to stay involved in our community, paying it back.
You're a social worker in our community.
I am. I'm a mental health and substance use support worker, and I've been doing that for about 9 years, and I very much enjoy that. Yeah. I'm also very out and open about being a trans woman, and not everyone is out about their gender identity, and so it's another thing that I like doing as far as work in the community, supporting other trans folks, and doing education around that subject.
Well, that's why I brought you on here today. I was hoping that we could have a conversation about what it means to be transgender and perhaps maybe enlighten some of the audience that are confused or that are fearful of this, right? So maybe let's talk about some of the statistics. I have here that Canada's population of 30.3 million people aged 15 and older identify as transgender. That's 1%. Is this correct?
That sounds about right, yeah.
And that is 1 in 300 individuals in Canada. So when did you come to the realization that you were transgender?
Well, I mean, that's a long story, and it's so individual for everyone. For me, I think it was probably around the age of 14 that I have a really clear memory of grappling with this question and these feelings and thoughts. And so this is back in, I'm going to say around 1990, and there wasn't, there's no internet, there wasn't a lot of information out there to help me make sense of my thoughts and feelings around my gender. I do recall going down to the library to look for some books, but I didn't even have the language and know what to look for. So I really at that time was feeling quite frustrated and acutely aware that I didn't feel like a young man. I didn't feel like that was the right path for me. And so my journey has been windy, and I would say in my teens, those thoughts and frustrations, knowing that the society around me didn't really accept people like me, I tried to bury a lot of that frustration with substance use. So I do believe that part of my gender journey is quite intertwined with when I was in addiction. So at the point when I started in recovery at about the age of 23, I do remember again having very clear thoughts about, oh right, I do believe that my gender is female. I feel like that should be my lived path, and how do I deal with that? And I did not take action at that time on it either, but.
Yeah, well, I think, so I'm gay. I was born in 1963. It was illegal to be gay in Canada until 1969, punishable by 11 years in prison. And I remember growing up as a young gay man thinking, where's the representation? I would turn on a TV, and if a gay person was in a movie or on a TV, it was someone that they made fun of. They looked at us as being deviant or wrong or promiscuous or dangerous. So I can't imagine what it was like to grow up transgender and not see any representation of yourself.
Right, and the only representation I had was problematic movies where the trans woman always was the victim or the secretive person or dangerous person. So seeing that kind of representation in media not only made me feel uncomfortable, but I really think it did a disservice for all people who are transgender, whether they're trans masculine, trans feminine, if they're non-binary, if you know the number of different gender identities in that way. Our general public has generally been given this. I would say inaccurate representation. So the history of media representation has not been very fair.
I agree. Well, as I said, 4% of Canadians are LGBTQ2A+. And people often say to me, why are we seeing so many gay people now? Why do we turn on commercials and see LGBTQ people? And I'm here to say that the population hasn't changed, it's the representation that has changed. And finally, people are creating platforms like movies or TV where maybe a sitcom, there's a neighbor that just happens to be gay. It's not a subject of conversation, and it's certainly not something to be made fun of. But it's taken a long time for our society to realize that there's a vast amount of space in between traditional male chromosomes and female, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you cope with this? You mentioned addiction. What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a very good time. Certainly, I struggled. For me, I stopped using all drugs, including alcohol, because that's what I needed to do in order to have a life that I enjoy, that I truly love, and I celebrate my life. And, you know, I've had this opportunity coming out of addiction all those years ago to live a very rich and full life. Again, I mentioned my boys, never known me to be in active addiction. I'm very open with them about being in recovery. And I carry that identity because it just reminds me that I don't say recovered. It just reminds me that it's not something that's I want to be a part of my life ever again. Yeah, and I don't really miss it at all, of course, either.
Yeah, you seem great, Sarah. You seem
Thank
so
you.
well. So I opened this show today talking about lived experience and how Sarah gives back to the community. So how do you give back to the community in recovery?
In recovery, well, I do try to stay networked with a whole bunch of other folks, lots of women in recovery. I like to, you know, I mentioned music and being a music teacher. I do very much enjoy mentoring, sharing my own experience. And if there's an opportunity to connect with someone else, maybe in early recovery, that has a lot of questions about how do you deal with the big emotions, how do you deal with a society that celebrates, you know, substance use in some ways and navigate that. I have had to work my way through those things with the support and help of other mentors. So I'm just sort of paying that back in my community. And yeah, I very much enjoy that. That enriches my life as well. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me connected to, I mentioned my spirituality when I brought up yoga, but also in my recovery, I really try to infuse my daily life with a lot of different spiritual principles to the best of my ability. I do my best.
I wanted to read something. It says, research suggests that among the transgender population, that transgender individuals have been found to be more likely to report poor mental health, anxiety disorders, and suicidal ideation. The reason for this vulnerability are complex and difficult to isolate. However, transgender people are often stigmatized in society at both the individual and structural level. Could we talk about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do believe that the pressures and in lack of acceptance in society in general are the major contributor, and studies do lead to that and point to that. Research around the lived experience of people who are transgender, again, simply asking someone, and I'll speak from my own personal experience, the response or the answers are that it's a tough go. At times, it's not easy. And while I do celebrate my life and I do have a beautiful life, I've had to lean on my resiliency, the coping skills that I've learned in my recovery, I've brought to my own navigating, living in the world as a trans woman who I would say I'm very proud about being trans. I'm very out, as I mentioned, but often I will blend in, and part of the reason for that is that I will put effort into blending in is because I'm safer. Because there are people out there who are absolutely intolerant and don't want people like me to exist. So while I'm very proud about being trans and I don't mind if I don't blend in and whatnot, I'm very feminine. And so as a trans woman, for me, what that means is I'm generally dressing and my gender presentation, my gender expression is quite feminine. I still am not trying to hide the fact that I am a trans woman.
Yeah, fear, that's inherent for many of the people in the LGBTQ2A population. I remember as a young man thinking, I bet my straight friends aren't walking through a parking lot with keys in their hand, right? There's that inherent fear that if we are discovered, that we may be finding ourselves in a dangerous situation.
That's right.
Yeah. So despite how special you are, Sarah, to me, and how unique you are to me, this situation is not unique. And unfortunately, there is a disproportionate amount of youth on our streets that are LGBTQ2+. Why is that?
Well, again, I talked about a society that's not always accepting. Some folks are absolutely wonderful allies and very supportive. Unfortunately, a lot of LGBTQ youth don't have supportive families, and it's not safe for them at home. And in those cases, I mean, that would be one of the reasons why a lot of those youth choose to not be home, to leave home at a very young age. Yeah.
Which is staggering, really, to think that it is not safe at home to make that decision to go to the street, which that in itself has a lot of problems. There are safety issues, there's drugs, there's, it goes on and on, right? Yeah, very difficult. Okay, so Sarah, let's talk about how you celebrate. What does that mean?
How I celebrate? Well, I try to focus on the wonderful things that I do have in my life today. And what I've learned at my age now in my life is that that has to still honor the difficult times. I don't want to just put on a smiling face and ignore when I'm having big feelings, you know. So that kind of approach allows me to process difficult feelings, difficult situations, and lean into the discomfort, as I've heard, as an approach to those sort of situations. So in celebrating my life, I don't just simply say, everything is fine, it's all perfect, because, you know, I have a life like anyone else. Sometimes it's not as easy as at other times. But so what I try to do in my life is be present, be in the moment that I'm in, and create a life where I enjoy that very much. If I'm with my kids, then I'm focusing on my kids, you know, not 100% of the time, but we do create quality time together. When I'm at work, I make sure that I have a job that I truly enjoy, that is rewarding to me, that I love to go to. And again, some days at work are harder than others, but by and large, I very much enjoy and celebrate the work that I do, and it has great meaning and gives me a great sense of purpose.
So can we talk about the work you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do that.
Well, again, I've been doing it for, I guess, almost 10 years, about 9 years, and worked for a number of different organizations. I was a casual worker at first as a support worker. That's one of the paths into that employment. And so I pieced together full-time work with a number of different employers and got to see where I really loved putting my time and energy into, and what worked well for me. There was AVI, Health and Community Services.
I'm a big fan of them. They're a great organization.
Yeah. That was such a rewarding position. It was about a year I worked with them. And so one of the things I did for them was education, work on doing workshops around gender diversity training for other organizations. I also did outreach support work for other people who are transgender, where their needs intersected with the other focuses of AVI Health and Community Services, perhaps being street involved or having substance use as part of their lived experience.
So I want to circle back. You said gender education. What was the term you used?
Yeah, gender diversity workshops.
What is that?
So that is doing, I guess you would say, a training workshop where we talk about gender in all of its expansiveness, not in, maybe a binary idea of there just being men and women as far as gender identity, gender expression, gender presentation, male, female, but what else there is out there and has been out there for in many cultures for hundreds and hundreds of years and beyond.
I would like to make a reference actually to Scientific America, which is a magazine. If they could look, there'll be a link to this, and it's called Visualizing Sex as a Spectrum. And I found it very educational, and it really opened up my mind, realizing that there, again, going back to what I said, there's a huge gap in between traditionally male, traditionally female, and that for generations we have not had the science or the understanding of that, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, the subject again is so broad, it would take a long time to cover it. The workshop that I've done is about an hour. It covers, again, I've mentioned gender identity, gender expression, gender presentation, gender norms, gender roles in society. But then we talk about physical sex, which is another piece of it, And one short thing worth mentioning is there's a term that I think a lot of people are aware of now that maybe have some awareness of the meaning behind it. I mentioned that I am a transgender woman. And so what transgender means is trans is other than or different from. So I was assigned male at birth, and my gender's not male, so it's different from that. So I am transgender. My gender identity is female, so I'm a transgender woman, transgender female. You could say have someone who's assigned female at birth, who is a trans man, they're transgender. Now, if someone is assigned male at birth and they grow up and their gender identity is male, then they're not transgender, they're cisgender. And cis is the prefix or prefix means same. So all that cis means is same as. It's a descriptor like a tall man or, happy man.
Right.
So cisgender man is just another descriptor. So, yeah.
Now, I understand you also support other individuals in transition.
I do, and I mentioned doing that work with AVI. I've done that work as well with Nanaimo Family Life Association, which is a wonderful organization in our community. They do so many things. And so, yes, I did, for a time, facilitate a peer support group. I also did, outside of that work, doing some support for our trans community, for folks early in transition that maybe wanted or needed help or guidance. Figuring out how to navigate pathways to care in our healthcare system, or just had general needs, maybe related to being trans, or maybe just not even related to that at all. But as that was a piece of their identity and they were needing support in other ways, I was there and loved that work.
So if someone that's out there watching the show today that is a youth and they need support, where would they go?
Well, here, we're on the island here, and in our province in BC, we have TransCare BC, and so their website is fantastic, and there's a ton of information there. Easy to contact them there.
Yes,
There's also, sorry.
No, nothing. Go ahead.
Another great resource is the Trans Lifeline, and that's North America, but they do have a Canadian component to that, and it's trans people on the other end of the phone. So if someone's in crisis, that's somewhere to call.
I believe we have both of those links underneath right now. Right. Okay, so Sarah, I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask you is how can we educate the community to be more understanding and to be more compassionate when it comes to transgender equality?
Well, I'm hoping that we're contributing to that right now.
Me too.
That's a big piece of why I'm here. It's a big piece of why I'm out and open about being trans in our community. How can we foster acceptance and compassion? I think a big piece of that is just simply getting to know someone. Lots of folks have little to no experience with actual people in the LGBTQ community, and very few truly know a person who's trans in a way that is more of a friendship or in a more intimate way. We might nowadays know of someone. So yeah, I think that getting to know someone, the other aspects of who they are as a person and the humanity of that really helps to undo any kind of discomfort, anti-trans bias, intolerance, or however we might put that. I've seen that in action, and so I think more of that hopefully can happen.
Definitely, from a personal experience, being a gay man, I can say that it was through compassion and through conversation that I was able to cope or to be able to help other people understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so there's lots of people watching the show today, and I'm really hoping that you and I have been able to maybe reach out to some people that might need some support, or maybe who have relatives or coworkers or people that they know that are transgender, that they might be a bit more compassionate or a bit more understanding here today. Was there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Oh, I'm not sure. This has been just a fantastic conversation, Dean. I'm very grateful to be here.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, I just wanted the audience today to have an experience to realize that there are many people in our community who are transgender. You're a really good friend of mine. You're a client of mine. We have an awesome time. You come and get your hair cut by me. I'm also a hairstylist. And through all those processes, we never really, it's not part of who we are. We are just people. We want to be out there sharing our lives with all sorts of people and being understood. You know, a lot of people talk about the gay agenda, and I'm here to say there's no gay agenda, there's no LGBTQ agenda. It's really about just wanting to have equal rights, to have equality, and to be treated with respect without feeling fearful.
Agreed.
All right. Well, listen, I just wanted to thank you again for coming out today. I can't thank you enough. Hopefully this is going to be a conversation for many to continue. I would like to circle back again that if you are watching this and that you feel that you need support, reach out to Transcare BC. The line will be underneath as I'm speaking, or also reach out to the Trans Crisis Hotline. Their phone number is 1-877-330-6366. And there'll be someone there to help and support you. All right, so what's next on the agenda for Sarah Cameron?
Well, I guess I'm probably going to head home and have a super tasty dinner and just watch probably a wonderful movie in my super comfy bed in my lovely apartment that I, just living my good life.
Nice. Well, the community is very lucky to have you, Sarah. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for supporting other people and also supporting people in recovery.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, you're an incredible, magnificent person.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for tuning in to UpFront. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.